Greetings, I'm Dike Rostant. Eid Mubarak. Imam Saffraz Ghany joins us to continue on the journey of Islam that we would have started with Imam Drayton Loney and sister Zainab Abdullah. We also speak specifically to Eid and the evolution of the faith in TNT. Greetings and Eid Mubarak. Imam, I'm still looking back from the point of Eid. I want to start off asking how important was the journey during Ramadan to this point?
Thank you so much, very much for having me on the program. Yeah, Eid definitely is a special occasion that Muslims tend to look forward to. The course of the month of Ramadan is a period of intense worship. It is a period of heightened spirituality. At the end of that period of worship and fasting and everything, Muslims tend to look forward to the celebration of Eid. And according to the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that is the time when the reward is basically dished out by Almighty Allah. During the course of the month of Ramadan, we exert ourselves in spiritual worship. And of course, we look forward to the occasion of Eid where we can meet with one another. And of course, we can all enjoy the celebration and we welcome that specific time during the course of the Islamic calendar.
And what was your personal experience like this Ramadan? And this is both as an individual as well as a leader in your community.
Well, to be quite honest, this year around, personally, it has been a lot easier compared to previous years, right? Secondly, basically everyone I have spoken to both locally and internationally have also expressed those sentiments that this year around, we have found the month of Ramadan to be quite easy. The fasting, went without any major hiccups, without any major hurdles. And that is something that, we look back and we really, appreciate and we thank Almighty Allah for.
And we thank you for that overview. But in terms of appreciation, I'd like you to give us an appreciation of Eid specifically and its significance. Thank you.
So, like I mentioned earlier, the Eid is an occasion that that we look forward to. During the course of the month of Ramadan, it is a period where we go without food, without drink, during the course of the day, and so on the day of Eid, that really is an occasion where we express our appreciation, our thanks to Almighty Allah for once again we can indulge in food and drink during the daylight hours. Also, it is a period where we tend to exert ourselves in prayer, and the Eid celebration. The very first thing that we do on Eid morning is to offer our thanks to Almighty Allah, and there's a very special prayer that has to be said on the day of Eid. So the first thing that we do in expressing our appreciation to Almighty Allah is that we perform that special prayer. And then, of course, the day is spent with community members, the day is spent with family, celebrating and gathering together. And of course, generally speaking, giving thanks to Almighty Allah for all of his bounties and blessings.
And in terms of the way that the way of life has been in Trinidad and Tobago, do you see, have you experienced, have you heard about an evolution of the faith in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, if you go back, a few generations ago, what we can say is that Islam basically came here, with our ancestors. Many of our ancestors who would have, traversed from the African countries, they would have brought Islam to our shores. And then also our ancestors that would have come from the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent as well, they would have also brought Islam to these shores. And, from my understanding, in the initial stages, many of our ancestors would have held on to Islam as a custom. Many of the customs that they were accustomed to in their various countries, the things that they were accustomed doing, and those traditions from the Islamic perspective is what they were able to hold on to coming through the generations. And then eventually, a lot of people, they were able to invest heavily in Islamic education. And I think that is what really triggered the evolution of Islam within our particular country as well.
And that point of being able to invest in Islamic education, how significant is that to the evolution to what it is we see in Trinidad and Tobago at this point in time. A little earlier, I would have even asked about the significance of being able to have an academic system that allows for the way of life to be practiced while you're also learning these other things pertaining to the school curriculum. Give me your take on it. Thank you.
I think that's a very, very important point. The education aspect, the Islamic education aspect is very important in, the growth of an individual. So many mosques are here in Trinidad, and I would say both locally and internationally as well. They have this system where they can educate the youth, give them the basic understanding, the basic knowledge of the tenets of Islam, the foundational aspects of Islam in terms of prayer, fasting, charity, performing the pilgrimage, so that eventually when they are then introduced to the academic system, they would have already had a proper foundational base in the Islamic teachings. And that in itself, it assists a person in being guided in his mannerisms, in being guided in the way he operates, within a particular field, and that really is important. For what I have actually noticed is that those individuals who did not really have that educational background from the Islamic perspective, it becomes difficult for them to, understand certain tenets about Islam, and for them to operate within the faith of Islam. Going into an academic system becomes a little bit challenging for them.
And looking at the different tenets of Islam, a little earlier you spoke about believers coming from different spaces in terms of Africa, subcontinent, and India. What does that mean for types of Muslims? What are some of those differences, or is this a monolith that we're looking at?
Well, I think people who came from the different countries, we have our ancestors who came from the Arab countries as well here in Trinidad. And, they would have all brought customs and rituals from their countries. And I think that really contributes to, the beautiful melting pot that we have here in Trinidad. The tenets of Islam remain the same. We all believe in the certain pillars of Islam, and the basic foundational beliefs remain the same. But, I think the culture that would have come together with the Islam is what really gives, us here in Trinidad, a unique flavor of Islam, which I think is very, very much welcomed. And I think even people who visit, our country, that is something that they are able to pick up on as well.
And on that point, we take a short break. We come back to this conversation. We are speaking to Imam Saffraz Ghany. Stay with us. We'll return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with Imam Saffraz Ghany. And Imam, one of the things you spoke about was that this period of Ramadan was a little easier than possibly the last 2 years. But with that in mind, though, I still want to ask, what are some of those safety precautions that would still have been taken during activities, iftar, breaking fast, and just in terms of the community and fellowship that would have been taking place during the period of Ramadan?
Well, let me first go back to the past couple of years, the 2 years that we've been in this, the so-called pandemic. And it's really been a trying period for Muslims all across the globe. I've had conversations with people here locally and abroad, and, it was really a trying time with all of the restrictions and the various lockdowns at certain points. Even here as well in Trinidad last year, we were able to visit the mosques for half of the month of Ramadan, and then we went back into a bit of a lockdown. So it was a bit of a touch and go scenario over the past couple of years with all of the restrictions and not being able to, visit the places of worship. So this year around, with some of the restrictions being lifted, I think, again, not just locally, but internationally as well, I think, that is something that, was very much appreciated by the Muslim community. Of course, not putting the fact aside that COVID is still out there. And I think many mosques have still kept some of the protocols in place in terms of the wearing of the mask, in terms of, washing of the hands and sanitization. And I think they've also put out notices that if anyone is feeling ill, They should, of course, let the administrators of that particular organization know, and they should not attend the mosques and probably put other persons in jeopardy. Some mosques, from what I've seen, they have also maintained the social distancing for the breaking of the fast, for the prayer, for the evening prayer as well. So those are some of the protocols that have actually been maintained. But in terms of people visiting the mosques for the breaking of the fast, for the very special evening prayer at night, I think that is something that people, they definitely did look forward to with enthusiasm this year around, as opposed to the other years.
And looking at the pillars of Islam, Imam, what are some of those specific pillars that you might point to that would have been easier to pay attention to follow, to have as part of yourself during this month of Ramadan versus the last two that you would have been hinting at?
Well, I mean, the first pillar really is that a person must have belief in Almighty Allah, the oneness of Almighty Allah, and that is something that we try to brush up on during the course of the month of Ramadan. So basically, there is a verse in the Quran that Almighty Allah mentions that we have made fasting, we have prescribed fasting unto you, just like we prescribed fasting unto previous nations, and so that you can gain a certain level of God consciousness. And that is one of the tenets of one of the pillars of Islam, basically, that we tend to invest heavily in during the course of the month of Ramadan, because we look now then to increase our worship, to increase our awareness of Almighty Allah, and also to build that connection with Him. During the course of the month of Ramadan, it is as though we are going past a fuel station, or a spiritual fuel station, so to say, so that person is able to take on board a certain level of spirituality. He can have, within himself, the awareness of Almighty Allah, that internal drive that will then push him to the obedience of Almighty Allah. So that definitely is one of the pillars of Islam that, definitely comes to light more so in the month of Ramadan. Also, the other pillar that comes to light, of course, is the pillar of fasting. Of course, the month of Ramadan, it is the month of fasting, where we fast for Almighty Allah. And fasting really is, it is a practice, not just of staying away from food and drink, but it is a practice of patience. It is a practice of tolerance. And it is also a practice of appreciation for the blessings of Almighty Allah. So those are just some of the pillars of Islam that really comes to light in the holy month of Ramadan.
One of the things that I really appreciate is the fact that everyone that I've spoken with, speaking about the month of Ramadan, is saying that, as opposed to saying, okay, well, you're abstaining from this, so you're fasting from this, but it's not as though there's a vacuum, because that space is filled with attention, is focus on Almighty Allah, looking at the fact that you are upping your prayer. I really appreciate the fact that you just said a spiritual fuel station. So I think that's a quotable. But in terms of a message for the faithful during Eid, what is that? What is that message that you'd like to share in closing with us, Imam Ghany?
Well, I think on the occasion of Eid, it is very important that we take into consideration two things. Number one, all of the good deeds we were able to accomplish during the month of Ramadan. And on the occasion of Eid, it is the ideal opportunity to do a self-analysis and ask the question, what was I actually able to achieve during the holy month of Ramadan? That is the first aspect. The second aspect is, once you have then been able to identify those things you were able to achieve in the month of Ramadan, the second measure is to put those measures in place to protect those characteristics, or to protect those traits. So it is very, very important that we then look to invest in those measures that can protect all of the worship that we did during the month of Ramadan, so that you don't have a scenario where you go through the month of Ramadan and you worship Almighty Allah, you inculcate all of those good characteristics, and then as soon as the month of Ramadan comes to an end, as soon as the announcement is made for Eid, you then go back to all of your so-called old habits, and you were not able to safeguard any of the worship, any of the good traits, any of the good characteristics that you were able to achieve during the month of Ramadan. So I think the effort has to be two-folded. Number one, in that you continue going through the month of Ramadan and of course achieving as much as you can spiritually, But on the occasion of Eid, I think that effort must be there to protect, what you were able to accomplish. And I go back to the comment I made, a spiritual fuel station. When a person pulls up to a station, number one, he takes on board fuel, but he also puts measures in place to protect that fuel. Because what happens is that if the protection mechanisms are not there, then the fuel becomes damaged or the fuel leaks out, or as the case may be, and then that person cannot travel very far. So it's the same concept. Once you have taken on board that spiritual fuel, it is very important that you put measures in place. The mechanisms must be there to protect your worship, to protect your characteristics and the level of your spirituality, so that it can definitely take you from one Ramadan to the next Ramadan. So that basically is the message for the day of Eid. And of course, we pray that Almighty Allah accepts all of our efforts during the course of the month of Ramadan, and may He give us our just reward in this life as well as in the life of the hereafter.
And Imam Saffraz Ghany, we want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us, especially at a time like this. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.